Yeah, Mike Bruce. I feel like we sort of met online probably 5 years ago on Discord or somewhere, maybe HeadFi. It's been a long time. How are you doing?
Excellent.
Good,
I,
good.
I had a daughter 7 months ago, so that's been a quite a change this year.
Well, congratulations. That's super exciting.
For sure. It's my first, biological
Yeah.
kid. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So, for those who don't know, Mike Bruce is Red Eyes, aka Short Bus, and he is not only an IEM aficionado, but he is also a tuner, and I believe starting to build an IEM from the ground up. And we're going to find out today what makes him tick and how he got started in the hobby and where he's going and what he thinks about it.
Cool.
I just want to learn a little bit about you. And I know I did a little research. You live in Taos, New Mexico now, and you're from Taos, and your parents raised you in Taos.
Yep.
And you have been a DIYer and a guy who's good at working with your hands for a long time. You were a plumber's apprentice for a bit. What was the deal? Tell me about being a plumber's apprentice.
Right around Y2K, computer work went off a cliff. Couldn't get any work, couldn't get any jobs. So it's like, well, might as well do something. One of my buddies my age was a plumber, and I'm just like, just go hang out with him and do some construction stuff and try and learn some real world skills, that kind of thing. And I did that for like 7-8 years. And, later on, after Y2K, the bug that never happened, really, everything picked back up. So I kind of quit that stuff. But, to this day, I'm really happy I learned plumbing because, my gosh, does it save me a lot of money. And it's nice to be able to fix your own stuff.
Do you think that like plumbing and IEMs have anything in common?
I do. And, interestingly enough, water actually flows very much like electrons in a cable. So, I don't know. It's a little bit of a weird analogy, but it is true.
Sometimes you'll use tubes to tune balanced armatures or even, dynamic drivers.
I don't know if I've taken any kind of inspiration from plumbing necessarily, but for sure that, measuring, being very appropriate with all the things you're doing with your hands, that's important to me. And, I learned a lot of that when I was plumbing. Also, just being an IT guy, there is a lot of making IEMs that you need to know computers to actually make everything happen. Mm-hmm. For instance, over the last year, I had to learn Autodesk Fusion 360 to be able to print, make my own IEMs. And my gosh, that was like going back to college,
I was actually reading about that on the on HBB's Discord page. I kind of scrolled back and I saw some of your models that you were doing, and you didn't mention Fusion 360, but I've actually taken a crack at learning some 3D modeling, and it's really hard.
I got 100 drivers with the idea that I'm going to make me 50 sets of IEMs, or maybe somewhat less than that.
And wow. Okay, well, hold on. You got 100 drivers. What were they? Dynamic, BAs? What, a mix?
Dynamic drivers. These good little guys right here. Whoops. These guys.
Okay.
Starting simple, shall we call it? If you've ever heard of the MIM Dark Magician, a fairly well-loved IEM, quite expensive for a one dynamic driver. I think they stopped making them at about the $600 point, and then they went off the market. And it was just like, well, this driver really performs well. It has a lot of the metrics I like, so I'm just going to go ahead and get some of these and, see what I can do.
So that dynamic driver that you bought 100 of is the same driver, as far as you know, that they put in the MIM Dark Magician?
Yeah.
How'd you even figure that out?
I was about to say, thanks to Hawaii Bad Boy, Chris, he sent his pair of Dark Magicians to HiFi, who's another DIY guy, right?
Yeah.
He likes to tear stuff down, and I do a little bit of that, but like I actually have a pretty hard time ruining IEMs that are really nice, and the Dark Magician was nice, so I have 2 pairs of those, and I never broke them, take them apart. Anyway, HiFi got them, tore them apart, put it on video, and then he's like, these are the same ones in the XSL X1 headphone, which is like a $50, $60 pair. Really cool. So I got in contact with the manufacturer of the XSL X1s, and it took me like 3 months to convince them to sell me drivers. And so now, thanks to, I guess I'll take the blame for this or whatever you want to call it, but they put those for sale, the drivers, raw drivers, on AliExpress. And, right after complaining at them for like 3 months on end, anyway, ordered 100 of those, got those in, and then I just kind of, went through the process. All right, I gotta put these in something, and I kind of would prefer to not be modding things at this point, just because I feel like I've progressed enough in terms of tuning and knowing what I want to do. So I'm just gonna go for it, right? Make my own headphone from scratch, basically. But yeah, thanks to Hawaii Bad Boy and HiFi, tore those down, matched the drivers, and it was just like, okay, it's on. I know what these are, and we can get them.
So that's what you're intending to build your first ground up IEM from?
These are them.
I think your path to building your own IEM is pretty interesting, and you really did build quite a cult following with your mods. You did the Glamdring X,
laser pants. There you go.
But the Glamdring and the Glamdring X were really, really popular mods. I mean, I know people were just lining up, sending you their IEMs to have you mod them. Yeah.
Very well received. Glamdring was the Lecture S12 Pros, also a few of the S12 originals. But yeah, I mean, I felt like those planar drivers really, really excelled in like staging. Clearly, like for one driver, having extension from 20 hertz to like literally 20,000 hertz with no, problems really. It was just like, this is a really good way to start. I have a one driver, totally, perfect coherency. Getting down the road, coherency is a big thing for me, actually. But so I did that, and it was really well received. When I tune IEMs, I really like them to play as much genres of music as possible. I have a huge variety, a large library. I like a lot of different music, and I just feel like it's kind of a cop-out to make an IEM that's really specialized in one thing. Plus, when I'm listening to my own stuff, I generally bounce around through a bunch of stuff. So yeah, that was kind of where that came from.
I get that you did it, and I think it's incredible. I'm a DIY guy myself. I've just been making stuff my whole life. But
cool.
What was the creative impetus for actually tearing one apart and seeing if you could make an improvement on it? And then how did you end up, doing that? Like, what was the process? What were you doing to the IEM to make it sound better?
It's a slight secret, but if you have one, you can take it apart and you'll know very quickly. The idea basically was that I can buy anything I want. I mean, that's not a problem, but I really do have a problem buying stuff without hearing it. So, I'm sort of throwing money at the wall, seeing what sticks. But I felt that particular driver and that particular headphone was like, it was like 100 and something, $20. That's a good place to be. You can modify, put maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours of work into it. I make little money. Somebody buys it for not an expensive price, and hopefully it exceeds expectations, that kind of thing. I actually, I'm not going to say I helped, but I talked to Hawaii Bad Boy a lot about the original Olinas, the Olina. That came from the original Oxygens.
Tantium Oxygen, yeah. That was a great set. Excellent
set, yeah. And I was just talking to Hawaii Bad Boy, and we were like maybe we could get these drivers, the dynamics in the Oxygen, and he has a lot more pull in the industry, can get things made, collabs. So I'm like, I was basically bouncing around, putting those drivers in any kind of shell I could do, and telling him what I thought about it. And then he came out with the Olinas, pretty well received, honestly. But that took me quite a bit of time to learn how to tune a dynamic driver, a one driver. But yeah, when I got the Lecture S12s, honestly, they sat in a box for like 6 months. And I was sitting there looking at them like, I hate to just leave IEMs in a box. I hate it. So I'm like, yeah, I'll pull these apart. I'm not going to say they don't mean anything to me, but like they weren't, like special. And I felt like I could take them apart. And if I break them, yeah, oh well. Nobody's going to die. So I did that. And as I started messing around, tuning them, I just felt like this is it's special. Like for the price, it's really, really good. I felt like it was in the area of like $500 to $700 sets. So it's just like, wow, okay. So what I did was I put acoustic treatment into the nozzle on those guys. The acoustic treatment, I won't tell exactly what it is, but it prevents reflections inside the nozzle. And as I started doing that, I realized, hey, this is actually working really well. Takes a little bit of the ear gain down. I can flatten things out. So I sold like maybe 25 of those, I think. And really well received. Everyone was just super psyched on it. And it's like, okay, maybe I know what I'm doing. Then I did another, I don't know, maybe 20 more of them, sold those off. And then I've been doing other little tiny mods on, like I had a bunch of headphones around. I buy headphones all the time based on hype or whatever else. And so I started taking stuff apart. I did the Super, which is based on the TRN conch. You can bleep that out if you want. But those are also well received. The idea behind that was to try and match the Nightjar Singularity.
Oh yeah.
I haven't heard those, so I'm sure I didn't do it perfectly. But I thought, well, if the graphs are somewhat similar, it's a one dynamic driver, maybe it's good. Again, pretty well received, not expensive. So that's been all happening. I got a little odds and ends that I've been modding and selling off. But then, so the dynamic drivers, the 10 millimeter, I think it's a CNT actually, but it's, I don't know, HiFi is just super weird about specifications on drivers. You never really know what you're getting essentially, but got those in, and then I spent the rest, basically the last 11 months learning how to 3D model, getting the drivers in the shells, and then I realized immediately that I bit off a lot more than I could chew. They're actually really hard to tune.
Oh, interesting. What are some of the struggles that you're up against, would you say?
Well, I didn't really fully realize, like typically, right, when you do a dynamic driver, you have a damper on the back of it. Like I could probably show you, I don't know if you could see it, but you got this little tiny damper on the back of the driver, and then you stick this in a shell, and you put another damper on the nozzle, and then you have a vent. Fairly simple. And I realized as I was doing that, it's like, this does not sound good. It doesn't sound anywhere near the Dark Magician, and it's like, oh boy. Okay, so I got to really get into this. So the Dark Magician itself, I'll just mention this because it's so hard to do. I could tell you how to do it and you wouldn't be able to do it. But it has a back air volume behind the actual driver. And it's got a vent and it's got a damper in the vent. So there's like call it the third chamber. It's like behind the driver. The driver itself has a damper. And then we have, of course, the nozzle and the vent. And as I'm doing this, I'm realizing, okay, for one thing, these drivers don't mount in they have a rounded shell, so they don't mount very easily. They can tilt around, and you got to create a little socket for them to sit in. And, once I did that, I realized, well, if there's a little gap as you're mounting it, that creates a whole different frequency response. The diameter of the nozzle, that changes everything. The length of the nozzle changes everything. The back air volume behind the driver changes everything. And it's just like, oh my. If you multiply all the variables, so like the back chamber volume, the damper, and the damper could be anywhere between say like a 400 and 650. There's all kinds of dampers in that range. They go by 50s, but so we got the damper, then we have the nozzle, and then if you multiply everything together, there's I swear, 1,000 combinations of what you could do.
Yeah, the variables are virtually endless. Yeah.
I don't think I fully realized that because I was using shells before that were already made. So anyway, I spent the last 11 months iterating, changing stuff. And the thing is, once I make an IEM, right, I have to sit there, and usually I've been doing this for hours, so my brain is fried. So I have to wait until it goes back to a baseline. So basically I'll make it, it sounds okay, maybe, probably. Next day I go and take it for a spin, right? Listen to it for a few hours, take some notes. Okay, it wasn't as good as I thought. Over time, everything is easier to understand. So go back, make changes, iterate and iterate and iterate. So that's what I've been doing for the last year.
And you're 3D printing your shells?
Yep.
Not only did you learn Fusion 360 and how to tune an IEM and all the acoustic treatment that goes into that, but now you're working with materials that maybe you're not as familiar with, like resins and...
immediately I was like, I want a clear IEM. Those are so pretty. You get to see the stuff inside. And I didn't realize at the time that I have a Uniformation GK2, which is like, I don't know, like high entry level, we'll call it. The printers can get a lot better. It's a UV mask printer, sends UV light through basically an LCD screen, exposes your UV resin, a small layer, and then moves the print head up and prints another layer, and so on and so forth. What I didn't realize though is clear resin, UV light bleeds through. So I kept trying to print these things out, and there's like all these deformations in them and like runs and like just what. Nobody's been talking about this because typically 3D printer stuff, you find a bunch of people printing little models of like Warcraft or whatever those things is, figurines. Anyway, so I played with that for a long time, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna just get black resin because probably it'll work better. Yes, so I got a black resin. Also, I mean, just in the back of my head, I'm thinking I don't want to. If you drop a resin IEM on something, you don't want it to shatter, and plenty of people have had that experience cracking them. So I'm like, I'm going to use ABS.
I bought my first pair of custom IEMs in 2005, and I was in Greece on a Travel Channel show for Samantha Brown or something, and I remember my shirt clip came undone, and I dropped my Ultimeteers 3-driver $1,500 IEMs and stepped on them, and they were just done. Yeah.
Back in those days, man, even just 3 drivers was so expensive. Oh my God.
I'm actually developing a portable speaker. I've been working on it for, almost 2 years, and I have both a resin printer and a filament-based printer. And I feel your pain. If I knew how hard it was going to be when I started, I would never have started. And it seems like you jump over one hurdle and then there are 100 more hurdles in front of you. So I feel your pain, but I have a feeling that you're going to succeed.
These were Twilight, the Softears Twilight inspired. So the reason that I felt like that was a cool thing is because as I'm prototyping, I can take the back shell off. I can put the driver in, and in other words, they're really easy to rapidly prototype and also build. And then, I had it at one point where I just had the nozzle coming straight out, like an earbud, typical $10 earbud. And it's like, the fit sucks. I want something higher level. So then I basically looked at my Twilight and it's like, all right, I'll do that. And I can't copy this. I don't have like a 3D scanner or anything like that. So I angled it off to the side, iterated, put it in my ear. It's like, oh, that feels nice, right? Then later on, let's see if I can do this. I realized that like just even having the little chamber here needed to be angled. The whole chamber needs to be angled to really fit nicely. So I did that. And then we have the back chamber here, right, where the air is. And then that changes things. So then I had to fix that and all that stuff. But this is a really nice like compromise type of shell because it's small, it's very light. It just, like super simple. You don't have to do a lot of stuff. And it's honestly, I would have preferred to have like a nice ear filling, very professional looking IEM, but as it turns out, this is fine. I think that people will like it, and I think it's light, easy to deal with, tough, and it should fit anyone really. That's the other thing, if you have something big and large and bulbous, it may not fit everyone. So
sometimes I feel like the emperor really doesn't wear clothes in this hobby, and people will spend a lot of money on fancy cables and fancy IEMs, and hey, more power to them if it's making them happy and they think that they're better. I personally believe that there's a threshold where an IEM is probably just not going to sound any better no matter how much it costs.
There was a period of time where like the more drivers you smacked into something, the more people wanted it, regardless of other things.
I have a 64 audio A18T. It's got 18 BAs per side.
I wanted those for a while, for sure. I like brands that only put out 1 or 2 sets a year. You could just kind of tell that they did a lot of work on it, right? And especially if it took many years, like they must have done like a good example is the Twilight Softears. I was in their Discord and I asked one of the moderators, I'm like, how long did this take to develop? And he's like, oh, years. I don't know if that's true, but I would imagine so. I've seen how that thing was built, and it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. You could find that information online, but it's not a dynamic driver smacked in a shell with a damper. It's got a lot of acoustic things going on in there. So yeah, I mean, and like you said, we have cables also. These guys that, and I mean, I'm one of those guys. I think cables do nothing. I can't possibly A/B test cables ever.
If someone wanted to find out more about your IEMs and possibly purchase do you have a name for it? What are you going to call this thing?
The name probably maybe is going to be the Anomaly. As I've been tuning it, I've got one of these little 7-Eleven couplers, right, and all that, and I've measured tons of headphones. And as I'm making this, I realize the things that I expect to sound based on the graph don't sound like that. So that's part of the Anomaly. The best tuning I've ever done on this is actually very etymodic style.
Oh.
So we're talking, a linear flat bass, sub bass, 2 mids, and then we have the ear gain starting at like 1K, going up, peaking at about 2.5, 2.6, I think, for etymodic, and a nice steady slope downwards into the treble, right around 10K.
I got my first pair in the early 2000s. I was using them. Actually, I remember using them on The Apprentice season 1.
Oh, far out. Okay.
Because I'd mix audio for TV shows. And I remember like being in New York City with my etymotics and everyone's like, what are those things you've got in your ears? So where would someone find out more about your upcoming product, and if they wanted to buy it, possibly?
Once I get these going, I'm going to have like a shortbus.com.
And Shortbus is your YouTube.
Right.
So people can go to Shortbus and watch your amazing, I love your videos.
The Shortbus in America, for people who don't know, is the bus that takes the special kids to school. And I happened to ride that because Taos doesn't have a lot of buses, so I had to be on the Shortbus when I went to school, and there was other special kids there that were hilarious. Loved them. But in any case, so I just felt like, I like taking the piss out of everything, so I just I'll start a brand that is for everybody, even the people that are special.
Yeah, we're all a little special in this hobby.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, thanks for taking the time to chat with us, and
no worries.
Best of luck with your project, and let's stay in touch.
Sounds good, man. You have a great one.
This video is brought to you by Linsol.com. Linsol sells IEMs, headphones, amplifiers, digital to analog converters, cables, really just about anything you could want for personal hi-fi or even home hi-fi. Their prices are great, the quality is exceptional, and their customer service is really second to none. Check them out in the link below.